आपके स्क्रीन दिख रही है सर हमको?
हाँ, स्क्रीन दिख रही है मेरे को। अभी मेरा प्रेजेंटेशन नहीं दिख रहा है
तो
इसमें।
आपका
वो प्रेजेंटेशन लेके आ
नीचे
जाओ
नीचे आपका पावर पॉइंट दिख रहा है ना?
हाँ ठीक है,
हाँ,
लेके आ गया।
ऊपर लेके आ जाइए सर, या
लेके आ गया
और
अभी।
उसको स्लाइड मोड में डाल दीजिए।
हाँ, स्लाइड मोड पे डाल देता हूँ। अभी इसमें मेरे स्क्रीन पे अभी मैं
यस,
खुद नहीं दिखूंगा ना?
आप दिखेंगे ना सर? नहीं, आप भी दिखेंगे, आपका प्रेजेंटेशन नहीं, नहीं सॉरी, आप नहीं दिखेंगे, आपको सिर्फ आपका प्रेजेंटेशन दिखेगा सर।
अच्छा अच्छा, बाकी लोगों को मैं दिख रहा हूँ।
हम लोग, हाँ हम सबको दिख रहे हैं सर। आप
ओके।
अपने कुरैशी सर है अवेलेबल? कुरैशी सर,
हाँ,
गुड आफ्टरनून।
गुड आफ्टरनून अब्दुल।
कुरैशी सर,
हाँ, हेलो।
हेलो
अभी
कुरैशी सर।
आवाज ठीक है क्या योगेश? आवाज
सर
ठीक है?
एकदम क्लियर है सर, आवाज
हाँ,
एकदम क्लियर है सर।
चलो ग्रेट।
अच्छा, यहाँ पे अभी सर 4 ही लोग आए हैं, हम थोड़ा 10
ओके।
मिनट रुकते हैं और फिर चालू करेंगे सर।
हाँ, रुकते ना रुकते, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं।
5 मिनट रुक के शुरू करेंगे सर।
हम्म।
कुरैशी सर,
हेलो। मैं इसको
हाँ
अभी,
सर।
तुम और मैं दिख स्क्रीन पे है तो मैं उसको छोटा करके एक कॉर्नर में डाल देता हूँ।
सर वो आपका सिर्फ प्रेजेंटेशन चलने दो, मेरा भी अभी बंद हो जाएगा, वॉइस और वीडियो दोनों बंद हो जाएगा मेरा।
ओके।
सिर्फ द प्रेजेंटर विल बी सीन, ओनली द प्रेजेंटर विल बी सीन। वो
ओके
कर दी मैंने
ठीक।
सेटिंग।
कर दी क्या?
नाउ वी हैव अराउंड 8 पीपल।
ठीक है ना, अभी आने दो, एक 5 मिनट टाइम भी है अभी।
कुरैशी सर आपको दिख रहा है बराबर? ठाकुर सर, एक मिनट मैं अटेंडीज में पूछ लेता हूँ। या राहटे सर, हेलो राहटे सर। राहटे सर, गुड आफ्टरनून। चुननकर सर, गुड आफ्टरनून, आपको माइक अनम्यूट कीजिए सर। हेलो चुननकर सर। कोई नहीं सुन रहा है। हमारे पास है सर अभी 8 लोग 9 लोग है। वेट फॉर
हाँ
5
ठीक है
मिनट्स,
ना।
4:05 है
हाँ, 5 मिनट बाद शुरू कर देते।
ना? आराम से। आपके वीडियोस वगैरह सब चलेंगे सर, इसमें कोई इश्यू नहीं जाएगा।
हाँ, मैंने टेस्ट किया है अभी, तो लेट अस सी।
कुरैशी सर, गुड आफ्टरनून। नहीं, गजबीर सर आले। गुड आफ्टरनून गजबीर सर। आपका माइक अनम्यूट कीजिए सर। गजबीर सर प्लीज अनम्यूट योर माइक।
Hello, good afternoon, Yogesh. I am there. Yogesh, can you hear me?
Yeah, sir. Are you seeing the presentation and Mukund Thakur sir on your? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I can see it. I can see it.
So, sir, yeah, you.
Hi, good afternoon,
Yeah, this is the
everybody.
confirmation. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, 15 people right now. Yeah, Prashant sir, Prashant Dhote sir, I have made you unmute. You can unmute your mic, sir. Prashant Dhote sir.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
Sir, you are one of the panelists today.
Thank you so much, Yogesh. Hello, Dr. Qureshi
So
sir is there
you and
also.
Dr. Qureshi sir are panelists today for the discussion.
Yes.
Yeah,
He is also online.
Yes.
Dr.
I
Prashant
welcome you
Dhote
all.
sir and Dr.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, so we have around 17 people online now.
Yes, rest of the people
So,
have
sir, we
gone
have
to
17
purchase the
people
candles.
online.
It's a healthy attendance to start.
So slowly everyone. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I'll hand over the proceedings to our panelist, Dr. Prashant Dhote sir and Qureshi sir. You can take over and start the session. Allow.
Yogesh, can I minimize my, can I hide my webcam from my screen, my picture from my screen? Because it is occupying some space. Hello.
You can hide it, sir. You can hide it. No issue with that, but then we will not able to see it.
I am unable to take it to one of the corners.
You are not seeing your.
Hello.
Okay, you are not seeing it full screen.
That's the problem.
Yeah, you are not seeing it on full screen, sir.
Yeah.
So, sir, there is one more option there. शेयरिंग वाला जो शेयरिंग वाला स्क्रीन है आप प्रेजेंटेशन दिखाइए क्लिक ऑन द ऑप्शन only your presentation will be seen.
Yeah. Now it is okay. Is that okay now with you?
Yeah, that's
Fine.
yes sir, we are seeing you.
That's
Sir,
great.
we'll start it now. Prashant sir. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, Prashant.
Hello. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah. I can hear you.
Okay.
Prashant.
Okay. I hope Qureshi sir also has joined us. Welcome all
Yeah,
for this.
yeah.
Hello. I am on behalf of Yogesh. This is all Yogesh hard work and mind that will be enjoying in this starting of summer. Very well renowned speaker from our own Dr. Mukund Thakur. He is the master of every surgery, but he is the super master in inguinal hernia surgery. I have learned so many things from him. And the topic which he has chosen today is decision making in inguinal hernia surgery. I think the topic itself speaks of everything. Today he is going to talk about not only lap but also open. I think he is going to touch upon the many aspects why people hate lap hernia surgery so much. And at the end of the talk, I presume that everybody will be making a wise decision whether to go for an open hernia surgery or lap hernia surgery. There are less people, I think, where they have gone to purchase candles for the evening 9 minutes workshop to be done by our Modi ji. So they'll soon join as soon as they are with the candles. Over to Qureshi sir.
Sir, there is some voice issue with Qureshi sir. His voice is getting a bit distracted. So I guess Mukund Thakur sir can start the session.
Yeah, sir, you can go ahead.
Yeah, as I've been introduced by Prashant, the topic today which I have chosen is decision making in inguinal hernia surgery. All of us, right from our residency to till day practice, we are all doing hernias day in and day out. The hernia surgery which I started during my practice has undergone a huge change from the open hernia surgery to the laparoscopic repairs. And I have adapted myself to the laparoscopic repairs, and for last now maybe 16, 17 years, I have been doing these laparoscopic repairs. So it's an interactive session. Everybody is free to ask the questions and share their views or experience after the presentation is over. I have considered some interesting developments in the history of hernia surgery relevant to our talk today. Appropriate and optimum treatment in different situations I have considered and discussed here. Pre-operative, intraoperative and post-operative problems which need to be addressed and handled judiciously are discussed. What are the goals of surgery in inguinal hernia repair? The surgery should be safe, it should be pain-free procedure, there should be zero infection, and there should not be any kind of recurrence. What are the factors affecting the decision making? There are anatomical considerations, age-related considerations, associated comorbidities, associated surgical conditions, like if the patient has undergone previous laparotomy in the lower abdomen or any other kind of surgery in the lower abdomen. Then selection of mesh regarding its size, the type of mesh, the fixation. Then consideration of size of defect, whether lap or versus open, equipments related to the laparoscopic surgery, some insurance issues, and gender of the patient. Anatomical considerations. Now, if you see this accompanying diagram, there are different layers shown in this diagram, and from outside in, this is cremasteric fascia, cremasteric muscle, external spermatic fascia, then external oblique muscle, then internal oblique muscle, transversus abdominis muscle, and then the most important layer or layer of fascia transversalis, and beyond that is this peritoneum. So which is the most important layer in this anatomy which is shown here? The most important layer is fascia transversalis, and we'll come to that why it is the most important layer. Now this fascia transversalis layer is very important whether you do an open repair or laparoscopic repair. Anterior view and posterior view, one has to get acquainted while you do laparoscopic repairs, one has to get acquainted with the posterior view of this particular region. The advantages of pre-peritoneal repair. The pre-peritoneal repair has got distinct advantage. We'll come to the point when we see the subsequent slides. But in the present era also, there is importance of the open repair, because Still, open repair is the most commonly practiced repair among all the surgeons. There is some hitch in amongst the laparoscopic surgeons to adopt to the technique of laparoscopic inguinal hernia repair because of probably the steep learning curve which is associated with this procedure. But at the same time, there are different situations. If the patient is very old, has got cardiac problems, or some kind of pulmonary problems, which due to which we cannot give general anesthesia, then obviously we have to do an open repair. So it cannot be forgotten. The open repair has got its importance. At the same time, if you are operating a strangulated inguinal hernia, it is better to do open repair rather than a laparoscopic repair. So the basic repair, that is open repair, one has to be very thorough into that, and you cannot neglect this particular repair. It has got its own place. Even in very large indirect or direct hernias, it is difficult to do a laparoscopic repair, so open repair is preferred. Now, there are certain factors which prevent the hernia formation or hernia recurrence. It's a physiologically dynamic and strong posterior inguinal wall, the shielding and compression action of muscles and aponeurosis around the inguinal canal, the squeezing and plugging action of the cremastic muscle, binding effect of the strong cremastic fascia. So these are the factors which prevent hernia formation or hernia recurrence. But still, hernia repair remains a problem because of recurrences at the hands of junior surgeons, risky dissection of the inguinal floor in cases of Bassini's or Schultes repair, infection and chronic groin pain following the mesh repair. So to consider the evolution of inguinal hernia, we have to go back into the history where there is description of the hernias in the Greek as well as the Egyptian literature. The Greeks used to use the truss, which is shown here, whereas this is the diagram where the patient is placed upside down for reduction of his or her obstructed inguinal hernia. There are certain milestones in the hernia surgery in the Listerian era. There is no point in considering the pre-Listerian era, which was where the treatment was quite barbaric. But in the Listerian era, first in 1871, Markey described an original paper on antiseptic herniorrhaphy and a use of carbolized catgut as a ligature to repair the hernia. Then Zerny came and described ligation and excision of the indirect peritoneal sac through the external ring. The Cocker then described the twisting and suture transfixation of the peritoneal sac in the lateral muscle through the external ring. McVan, Lucas also added their contribution to this particular surgery. But later on, Bassini was a surgeon who presented his paper in Italian Surgical Society in Genoa in 1887. The title of this paper was Radical Cure for Inguinal Hernia, and he reported only 8 failures in 206 hernia repairs during a 3-year period. Earlier to this, all the milestones which we have seen in earlier slides, there was a recurrence of about more than 40 to 50% patients within the first year of the surgery. So this was a big breakthrough in the hernia repairs. And then Bassini's operation became the epitome of modern day tissue repair. It consisted of opening of external oblique, resection of cremastic fascia, exposure of the spermatic cord, division of the posterior wall, exposure of the preperitoneal space, and high ligation of the sac, reconstruction of the posterior wall in 3 layers, and reformed external ring by closing the external oblique aponeurosis. Then the there was modification in his own technique. Bassinis stopped incising the posterior wall, and instead of that he started plicating the posterior wall, and rest of the repair remained the same. Halsted described a modification wherein the external oblique was closed and the cord was kept on the external oblique aponeurosis subcutaneously. When Cooper came and described a particular stitch, which was the medialmost stitch, which was responsible for recurrences in cases of Bassinis repair, that was the modification suggested by Cooper's. Then came the Scholdy's repair, and it revitalized the Bassinis repair. In the Scholdy's clinic, patients walk in and walk out, and the procedures are always done under local anesthesia, and they permit reasonable mobility and early ambulation, early exercises. All the procedures are done under local anesthesia. Weight is an important criteria. An overweight patient is never taken on the table unless he reduces his weight. Bilateral hernias are never operated in single sitting. They are always operated in 2 sittings. A stainless steel wire is used for repair. Imbricated posterior wall closure with continuous monofilament suture is described here. And the routine sacrifice of lateral cremastic bundle is done. There is a close follow-up of patients in Scholdy's clinic, and best and most enduring results of any other type of tissue repair are seen by the Scholdy's repair. So this has become the gold standard of hernias repair, and it has remained so for last 4 decades now. Then came the concept of tension-free repairs. Every type of tension-free repair has to use some kind of prosthesis, mesh, whether it is done through an open anterior approach, open posterior approach, or a laparoscopic route. The most common prosthetic open repairs done today involve use of Kugel patch, Lichtenstein onlay patch repair, Prolin hernia bilayer patch repair. I consider hernia repair as a wedding between the defect and the mesh. Wedding because the mesh has to form a strong and firm bond with the defect. So defect becomes a groom here and mesh becomes a bride. Now, like any kind of bride who comes to stay with her groom, has to leave her parents' home and has to come into the house of the groom. She has to adjust with different environment. So a mesh has to have certain kind of properties for it to become an ideal prosthesis. So what should be ideal prosthesis? Should be chemically inert, should not be physically modified by tissue fluids. It should not excite inflammatory or foreign body reaction, should not be carcinogenic, should not produce any allergy or hypersensitivity, should be capable of resisting mechanical strain, be capable of being fabricated in the form required and constructed in a way such that suture or cutting will not cause the mesh to unravel or fray. So it should not tear whenever it is cut or given a kind of shape. One should be able to sterilize it easily, should be permeable to allow tissue growth within it, should stimulate the fibroblastic activity to allow incorporation into tissues rather than sequestration or encapsulation, should be sufficiently pliable so as not to cause stiffness, or it should not be felt by the patient, should be strong enough to resist any kind of bursting by the maximum forces that can be created by intra-abdominal pressure or pressure from outside. There are non-metallic synthetic prostheses, and the commonest prosthesis that is used is polypropylene and the polyester. The Stoppa's repair came after these meshes were discovered, and it involved open preperitoneal approach. wherein the entire preperitoneal bag is wrapped with a mesh graft. Expanding intra-abdominal pressure holds this mesh against the abdominal wall, and there is no suture fixation done in this for these meshes. Reeves-Topaz plane is a hot topic or topic of discussion in any kind of hernia conference, and that is the plane described by these great surgeons. It involves the principle of hydrostatic pressure described by the Pascal, wherein you can see this is the basin and there is a stopper. The stopper is kept from inside and the pressure by this water holds it against the defect. So using a mesh from inside in the preperitoneal plane also holds the mesh. The abdominal pressure holds the mesh against the abdominal wall. So that is the same principle which is used here. There are two laparoscopic repairs that are commonly practiced, that is tape and tap. I have personally liked the tape procedure, and I have been doing this tape procedure for last maybe around 16-17 years. So most of my talk hereafter will be regarding the tape repairs, and I'll consider different kinds of problems which arise during this procedure. What are the guidelines or recommendations given by the International Hernia Society about the different steps in this procedure? Before we start our discussion on preperitoneal repairs, it is important to consider this anatomy with which the surgeon is not usually acquainted. Nowadays, the postgraduate students get enough exposure of these procedures in the institutes like Government Medical College Nagpur, where plenty of laparoscopic surgeries are being done. But that's not the scenario at different other institutes. So if you consider this space is bound by the, there is a myopectineal orifice of Frochard, which is bound by the muscles on one side and the ramus of pubic bone on the other side. And it is divided into upper and lower part by the extension of this iliopubic tract. The upper part is a space where through which the indirect and direct hernia occurs, and the lower part gives a weak spot through which femoral hernias can occur. On the other side is the completely exposed preperitoneal space and the important anatomical landmarks that are shown. So a complete dissection involves two spaces. One is the space of Ritzius and the other is the space of Bogros. The space of Ritzius is between the symphysis to the inferior epigastric artery, and the space of Bogros is a space lying lateral to the cord structures. What are the recommendations by International European Hernia Society? The landmarks to be visualized are pubic bone, Cooper's ligament, inferior epigastric vessels, cord structures, the myopectineal orifice of orifice boundaries, and the fascia over the psoas muscle. One should not expose this psoas muscle because there are important nerves traveling in this space and they should remain covered with the thin layer of fascia there. Posteromedially, the peritoneum is reflected to the point where the vas turns medially. There is a grade B recommendation which says that extensive preperitoneal dissection with complete exposure of the myopectineal orifice of Frochard is critical to the success of laparoscopic inguinal hernia repair and placement of mesh. So while dissecting, you should stick to the proper plane, that is the plane. Herein we can see when we enter the preperitoneal space, we see the transversalis fascia, and there are two distinct layers of transversalis fascia, one which is very close to the muscles. The muscles are rectus abdominis and transversus abdominis, and the other layer is covering the peritoneum. So if you try and create a plane in between these two layers, the dissection is almost avascular and you can maintain the plane absolutely bloodless. And this plane is easily dissectable in at least 70% of patients. At the same time, when you are going to dissect the space of Bogros, one has to keep the inferior epigastric vessels close to the abdominal wall and then create a plane between the cord structures and the peritoneum and enter the space of Bogros. One should avoid the injuries. There are two triangles seen here. One is red triangle and the green triangle. The red triangle is triangle of doom, which is bounded by the vas deferens, the cord structures and the reflected part of peritoneum, and external oblique vessels, external iliac vessels lie in between this triangle. At the same time, this is the lateral triangle or triangle of nerves or triangle of pain, which is bounded by the cord structure, the iliopubic tract and the reflected part of peritoneum. So one has to see to it that you are not injuring any important structures. The important nerves which travel this lateral space are lateral femoral cutaneous nerve, the femoral branch of the genitofemoral nerve, and the femoral nerve, which runs on the surface of psoas muscle and the iliacus muscle. There is one more important artery which is about 5 centimeters away from the symphysis on the Cooper's ligament. If you start your dissection and approach this particular area, there could be an artery communicating inferior epigastric artery or the external iliac artery with the obturator artery, and which curves along the pubic bone to enter the obturator artery. By chance, if you injure this artery, then this is likely to retract and give rise to fair amount of worrisome bleeding, and which is difficult to control. So while dissection or while fixation of the mesh, one should avoid putting any tacker in that particular region. So there are different problems associated with this step, which is dissection of the periperitoneal space. The problems like injury to the bladder. So bladder has to be emptied before the surgery. This is a very important step, especially for the surgeons who are learning this hernia. They may take a little longer time, and by that time the bladder may get completely filled up, obliterating the space or reducing the space, or there is vulnerability to the injury of bladder. So empty the bladder before surgery, or if your surgery is going to take little longer time, particularly in large hernias, irreducible hernias, where you anticipate more operating time, it is better to put in a catheter and keep the bladder empty. While dissecting the cord, there could be injury to the cord, vas, vessels or nerves. So avoid direct holding of the cord, avoid dissection in the triangles, avoid bearing of the nerves. There could be dropping, dissection or injury to the epigastric vessels while putting the ports or while dissecting the lateral space. So identify the epigastric artery near its origin, and if the dissection occurs and if there is an injury, there is no need of any worry. One can always clip this vessel. Then there could be peritoneal tearing or buttonholing of the peritoneum while dissecting. So avoid holding of the peritoneum, gentle dissection, minimum use of the cautery should be the dictum. Now, this is the dissection of inferior epigastric artery. As I said, keep one hand keeping the vessel pressed to the abdominal wall, and then enter the space of Bogros laterally so that there is no injury to the inferior epigastric vessels. And this is the corona mortis artery, about 5 centimeters away from the symphysis, communicating the inferior epigastric vessel with the obturator vessel. While you dissect the peritoneum over the vas or the cord, don't hold the peritoneum directly. There is a thin fascia which you can hold and retract the peritoneum and avoid injury to the peritoneum directly. So that is again a view of this corona mortis there. One has to go up to the inferomedially up to the obturator nerve, and you should demonstrate the obturator nerve. Then, while handling the peritoneum, don't hold the peritoneum. There is a tissue covering this peritoneum, loose areolar tissue, which you can coagulate in short bursts of cautery and then retract the peritoneum without injuring it. How much to retract, we have already seen. Then, this is only to demonstrate where exactly this obturator foramina lies. If you follow this nerve, which is seen easily as a white cord-like structure, this enters the obturator foramina, and that's the plug of fat being dissected away from the obturator foramina. That's where the herniation in the obturator canal occurs. So dissection of the hernial sac, there are problems while dissecting the direct sac. If there is a very large direct sac, there could be seroma formation in the postoperative period. So dissect it very gently. Coagulate. If it is a small sac, you can reduce the size of sac by using short bursts of monopolar cautery, or you can create a fenestration or a window inside this fascia transversalis so that the seroma or fluid of seroma enters into different plane from where it gets absorbed. Indirect sac, while dissecting the indirect sac, there could be injury to the cord. So try and avoid holding the cord and use only short bursts of the cautery, and avoid giving any kind of traction. Never ever hold the vas deferens, because injuring a vas deferens could be disastrous. Very large indirect sac can be cut at the internal ring, and the proximal portion can be tied and distal one left as it is. So this is the picture showing the tacking of this fascia transversalis to the Cooper's ligament to avoid any kind of dead space so that there is no seroma formation. So what are the recommendations? A large direct sac, the direct sac should be inverted and anchored to the Cooper's ligament to decrease the risk of seroma and external hematoma formation. As an alternative to the primary closure of the direct inguinal hernia defects, with a pre-tied suture loop can be used. This is a new recommendation where the direct hernial defect is, some papers have come regarding the direct closure of the direct defect. I personally have not tried this, but using a loop which we use in cases of appendicectomy can be helpful in this particular step. So large indirect sacs, dissection of the indirect sac is done with the blunt forceps and complete exposure of the spermatic cord and round ligament and all inguinofemoral hernial orifices. A large indirect sac may be ligated proximally and divided distally. In cases of irreducible hernia, there could be problem if there is irreducible omentum, or there could be problem if there is irreducible intestine. If it is a irreducible omentum, try and dissect the sac. You may even open the sac and try and reduce the omentum directly. But still, if you are unable to reduce because of a large plug inside the scrotum or the groin, then cut the omentum at the level of internal ring. Finish the procedure by cutting the sac at internal ring and then deliver the omentum through the scrotum. If it's an intestine, if there is only obstruction, one can release the neck at the level of 11 o'clock position, that is, or 2 o'clock position. 11 o'clock on left side, 2 o'clock on right side, so that there is no injury to the vessels at the neck. But handling a irreducible enterosul should not be done by the beginners. It is better to do open repair in these situations. And for strangulations, definitely one should not try doing a laparoscopic repair. In cases of omentum which is irreducible, as you can see in this video, I am cutting the omentum at the level of internal ring. And once this is cut, the peritoneal sac is also cut at the internal ring, and the procedure is carried out like a tape repair, and subsequently scrotal incision is taken to deliver the omentum through the scrotum. So that's the scrotal incision for a very large omentocele. You can deliver the omentum through the scrotum and complete the procedure. There's a huge omentum inside the scrotum, which I was unable to reduce laparoscopically. There could be problem of recurrence. It could be a pseudo recurrence if you miss a sac. So look for obturator hernia, look for femoral hernias, and lipoma of the cord. Sometimes a sliding structure like lipoma along the cord can give rise to filling of sliding of intestinal contents in the sac. This could be a filling like a pseudo recurrence, and patient is never satisfied. So one has to really look for it. So that is the, while dissecting the indirect sac, the omentum lies lateral to the cord structures, and one can dissect the not omentum, the preperitoneal fat which goes into the inguinal canal can be dissected, and this is the lipoma of the cord. While placing a mesh, there could be crumbling or folding of the mesh. So do not use very light meshes. A little stiff mesh is better to be used in this particular region, because in large defects, this small, this light meshes or macroporous meshes can propel outside the defect, giving rise to a true recurrence. While laying down the mesh, we should ensure that the dissection is very adequate and there is proper spread of the mesh. Inadequate cover to the hernial orifice. The minimum size of the mesh is 15 by 10. Generally for Indian built patients, this size is sufficient. But in cases where there is larger defect or the patients are well built, then you can use a 15 by 12 centimeter size mesh, or even up to 17 into 12 centimeter size mesh. The mesh can, smaller mesh, if it is not fixed, can migrate. So to avoid the migration, fixation of the mesh, self-gripping mesh or pre-shaped mesh can be used. The mesh can get infected, which requires its removal. So always use sterilized instruments. Never ever use instruments kept in the formalin chambers. There should be one person handling of the mesh from the sterilized packet to the introduction. No other person should touch the mesh, and you should change your gloves at this juncture. The minimum distance between the margin of prosthesis and that of the hernial opening should be equal to the diameter of opening in hernias of the size 2 centimeters or larger. So minimum 2 centimeter overlap for hernias up to 2 centimeters and larger overlap for hernias more than 2 centimeters. So for hernias more than 4 centimeters, the prosthesis should be fixed to prevent the recurrence. In cases of direct hernias, medial overlap is more. In cases of indirect hernias, the lateral overlap is more. These are the guidelines given by the European Hernia Society. The large hernia openings up to 3 to 4 centimeters or more, larger mesh may be used up to 17 by 12, and large direct defects 3 to 4 centimeters, one can fix the mesh medially to the Cooper's ligament and laterally to the abdominal wall muscles above the iliopubic tract. One can alternatively use self-gripping meshes, which I am using these days, that is the LaproGrip. In large indirect defects, say about 4 to 5 centimeters, the overlapping of the mesh has to be more on the lateral side. That is, it should cross the anterior superior iliac spine and go beyond it at least up to 1 to 3 centimeters, depending on the size of indirect hernia. A repair can fail because of different reasons. It could be a surgeon-related problem or a technique-related problem. There could be inadequate space creation, a slit mesh or a small mesh, shrinkage of the mesh, or lack of fixation. So to fix or not to fix, or can the mesh fixation prevent the recurrence? What can a mesh fixation do? If it is not fixed, then mesh can move or slide from lateral to medial side or from superior to inferior side. It can roll up from lateral edges or medial edges or inferior border or superior border, or it can cave into the direct defect. So there could be mesh displacement. To prevent the displacement of mesh, there are certain precautions one should take. Anesthetist should be informed to give adequate relaxation during the laying down of the mesh. There should not be any bucking on reversal of the patient. While using the mesh, do not slit it. Use a large mesh, and you can use a non-shrinking mesh. The two commonest meshes used these days are polypropylene and polyester. The polypropylene mesh tends to shrink a little more than the polyester mesh. There is about 30 to 40% shrinkage in cases of polypropylene meshes, and the polyester meshes shrink up to 10 to 15%. So if the surgeon allows some kind of wrinkles there or uses a very light mesh which is not fixed against the wall, then there could be recurrences in cases of direct or very large indirect defects. So does the conventional fixation eliminate this problem? What does a conventional fixation do? If it is fixed above the iliopubic tract, it eliminates the lateral displacement, eliminates the rolling down of the mesh. If it is fixed below the iliopubic tract, medially, there is no roll up, or though there is no caving in of the mesh into the direct defect. If you fix the mesh on the abdominal wall above the iliopubic tract, you are not likely to injure the nerves there, and 80% or 85% of patients will not have any kind of nerve injury. But there could be 15% risk of aberrant nerves there. Then we come to the choice of mesh. The type of meshes available, as I have told you, is polypropylene, polyester, and the biodegradable. Biodegradable meshes are used in very particular situations where there is potential infection or infected hernias, where you can use the biodegradable meshes. Different size of meshes available are 15 into 10, 17 into 12, and 16 into 12 size meshes. Or you can use 15 by 15 size mesh and trim it according to your need. You can use a 3D mesh or a flat mesh. Fixation either can be suture fixation or tacker fixation or glue fixation, or you can use a self-gripping mesh. So does a type of mesh use have an impact on outcomes of inguinal hernia? This is a paper by Shah and Matthews published in the American Journal of Surgery. Lightweight polyester meshes. They have compared the polyester meshes with the polypropylene meshes. So their conclusion is lightweight polyester meshes has got better long-term outcomes for the chronic pain and foreign body sensation in polyester group as compared to the polypropylene group. So polyester mesh that is available today is Lacrogrip mesh, which has a thin collagen layer on one side and micro grips made of polylactic acid on the other side. Both this thin layer of collagen and polylactic acid are absorbable, and after a due period they get absorbed. While the great advantage of this Pro Grip is clearly its micro grips and self fixation, this property itself is also its limiting factor with respect to handling. So micro grips are club shaped 1 centimeter projections that are made of biodegradable polylactic acid. Micro grips integrate into the tissues for about 0.5 millimeter below the lower rim of the mesh and provide the stronger tissue incorporation at least for 5 days than fixation with the staple. Pro Grip mesh is a macroporous mesh that is more hydrophilic than the polypropylene mesh, providing improved biocompatibility and superior cellular proliferation. These polyester meshes are hydrophilic, and then they tend to attract more amount of fibrosis and good amount of tissue ingrowth in the mesh. So it is designed to support the patient comfort and mobility. It's a unique balance of properties, provides fast and true tissue ingrowth with reduced foreign material reaction. I have till date used about 300 meshes. This is regarding the Pro Grip meshes. 186 in unilateral hernias, 57 in bilateral hernias, 183 for indirect and 117 for direct hernias. 223 patients were primary and 77 were recurrences. Operative time initially was more than 1 hour. Nowadays it is about 25 to 45 minutes for unilateral and about 40 to 55 minutes for bilateral. Follow-up is at the end of 3 days, 30 days and 3 months and 4 years. I have a follow-up of patients whom I have operated 4 years back as well. The mesh size is 15 into 10 centimeters, and some large meshes also I have used for about 49 meshes in cases of patient who had a robust build. Pseudo-sac fixation for direct large hernias. Analgesic requirement is single dose paracetamol or diclofenac on the evening of surgery, and subsequently paracetamol plus tramadol SOS. Prophylactic antibiotics 2 doses. I have done a follow-up at the 3rd day, 30th day and 3 months. The results are analgesic requirement is only there up to 48 hours. Thereafter there is no requirement. I have done pseudo-sac fixation in 48 patients, but still about 68 patients had seroma formation because although their sacs were small, they developed some kind of seroma, but most of them resolved on their own in about 2 to 3 months time. One patient I still remember required aspiration, and one patient required drainage of this seroma because there was blood clot organized inside it. Cord edema because of handling of the cord is seen in about 153 patients, and transient neuralgia in about 15 patients. Persistent neuralgia in 2 patients, which I am unable to explain. Maybe their nerves got exposed in the lateral triangle. There was no infection and there is no recurrence. That's the very important. Now, once the procedure is over, you should close large peritoneal tears, because sometimes there could be herniation of loops of intestine leading to post-operative operation if the tears are very large. Smaller buttonholing can be left as it is. Remove working trocars under vision, desufflation, ensure complete emptying of the peritoneal CO2, ensure proper closure of the sheath to prevent port site hernias. Convalescence, it is recommended that limitations are not placed on the patients following an inguinal hernia operation, and patients are therefore free to resume activities. Do whatever you feel you can do. Probably a limitation of heavy weight lifting for 2 to 3 weeks is enough. This is what the European Hernia Society says. The risk of seroma formation is between 0.5 to 12%, and most seromas disappear spontaneously within a period of 6 to 8 weeks. It is recommended that seromas are not aspirated for 2 months. And it is recommended that you can keep a wound drain if you are seeing more oozing during the dissection or in cases of coagulopathies. So drain can be kept for 48 hours, which reduces the chances of seroma formation. Mesh infection can be avoided by use of preoperative antibiotic prophylaxis, strict asepsis, and preferably taking the hernia case as a first case. Change of gloves, immediate insertion of the mesh without keeping it on the trolley, single hand handling, and consider drain if there is oozing. There are different situations like extremes of ages, wherein there could be anesthesia challenges, and one may have to do a open repair. In cases of low ejection fraction or ischemic heart disease also, or in cases of pulmonary problems which do not allow general anesthesia to be administered, then or even spinal anesthesia is not possible to be given, then it is better to do a open repair. In emergency cases where there is strangulation, one should do a open repair. Irreducibility is dependent on the skills of the surgeon. If there is umbilical hernia with the inguinal hernia, the umbilical hernia can be repaired with IPOM repair, and the inguinal hernia either by the TAPP repair or tape repair. In cases of previous abdominal surgery, better to do a TAPP repair than the tape repair. In cases of recurrent hernia, if there is recurrence after the laparoscopic repair, it is better to do a open repair. And in cases of recurrences after open repair, laparoscopic plane is unentered, and we can do a nice preperitoneal repair. Preoperatively, the most important preoperative precaution is proper patient selection for the surgery. In the initial part of the learning curve, ideally direct or small indirect hernias are best. Large hernias, obese patients, and irreducible hernias, obstructed hernias are best avoided. Absolute contraindication is strangulated hernia. Detailed workup of elderly patients to assess cardiorespiratory status is mandatory to ensure safe outcome. It is recommended by the hernia surge in 2016 guidelines that the patient should empty his or her bladder before the surgery. Restrictive per and postoperative intravenous fluid administration reduces the risk of postoperative urinary retention. So give minimum fluids in the postoperative period or intraoperative period. If you expect a technical difficulty, that is large scrotal hernia, or if you are operating a recurrent hernia, then it is better to put in a catheter so that you can avoid any kind of injury to the bladder. In older patients, you can use tamsulosin preoperatively to prevent the urinary retention in the postoperative period. This is a short video of using this ProGrip mesh by only 2 ports. That's the reduction of the sac, then dissection of the cord, and then the mesh is placed, and it is folded in the form just like a banana leaf folding is done, and then it is opened after it is laid horizontally. The medial end is crossing the pubic symphysis. The lateral end is much beyond the internal ring. So that's the medial end. And that's the complete lie of mesh. So with practice, this you can do in 3 to 4 minutes time. And adequate covering of all the orifices. This patient also requires a diagnostic laparoscopy. So the same scope was put inside to see. So that's the direct sac that is dissected, and this is the mesh which is well laid across all the defects. So the conclusion is pre-operative, intraoperative, post-operative decision making is very important in any surgery, particularly in inguinal hernia, to avoid any kind of problems during these phases. Choice of procedure, selection of mesh can influence the outcome of inguinal hernia surgery. Keeping surgical safety in mind, one can master any procedure under proper guidance. And goals of hernia surgery should be kept in mind while taking any decisions. Thank you. Hello.
Yes, sir. Dr. Bhavdi sir and Dr. Qureshi sir.
Yes, with this we come to the end of this presentation. If there are any questions, I would like to take them.
Bhavdi sir, your mic is muted. Please unmute it.
Hello.
Yes, Prashant.
We have Qureshi sir with us.
I think there is some problem with his mic, which is not audible at present.
So we are
I
missing
have
him.
unmuted mic too.
It was an
Yeah, Qureshi.
excellent presentation, sir. I thought, and it is perfect, 100% perfect. Few of the questions which I have is, one is, which company mesh as per you is the best in handling in lap repair? You have emphasized more on ProGrip, but suppose if there is no ProGrip, which other company's mesh is the best? There is no pharma persons who are sitting here, you can be free.
No. Without any undue interest, I would recommend a mesh by this Centennial, which is slightly stiffer, and as soon as you open it, it remains very flat, crumbled against the abdominal wall. All the other meshes which I have used, if you ask me, are a bit soft, and they tend to crumble unless you fix them at lateral ends. If you do not want any kind of fixation, then it is better to use Centennial mesh, with which I am happy about.
Right. So nice of you, sir. It was a frank opinion. Any other questions are also invited. I'll be asking in between the questions so that the things the seminar webinar goes on. Hello, Yogesh. If anybody else has questions, they can ask.
Qureshi sir. Yeah. I'm taking one by one. Qureshi sir, you have raised your hand. You can go ahead with your question. Yeah, Qureshi sir is not answering. Yeah, I'll next ask Dr. Raj Gajbia sir.
Question sent to you through the SMS, and you can answer. You can ask the question on his behalf.
So Raj Gajbia sir, you have a question? Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, can I come in?
Yes,
Yes,
Raj.
sir.
Good evening.
Okay, it's an excellent talk, Mukund. You have covered almost all the aspects of hernia surgery. I have
Thank you.
one comment and one question.
like you have said
Yes.
in your talk that the mesh to be the bride and the defect to be the groom. So I am yet to find like an ideal bride. It's difficult to find an ideal bride. I am yet to find an ideal mesh. What's your opinion about that?
I leave it
And
to everybody's
the
judgment.
next question is, what do you think
Yes.
about what what do you think about uh, 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 e-tape repair? Are you, still on tape repair, or you have shifted on e-tape repair? Number one. And
Yes.
can you sum up with a very clear take-home message for our audience here, so that which patients you would like to do tape, which patients you would like to do tap, and which patients you would like to do uh, an open?
Okay. Regarding your first comment about the ideal bride, I do not want to hurt any sentiments of our female fellow surgeons, but this was
No,
in the latter note. I leave it to everybody's judgment about finding an ideal bride.
no, no. My question is
So
just,
this
did you find an
analogy
ideal
was
mate till
only,
now?
yeah, yeah, that answer we are yet to get. But amongst the present lot, the shortlisted materials which are being used are polypropylene and polyester. Uh, a bit advantage with polyester is that it tends to shrink less and allows good amount of fibrosis. So since the time I have started using this Pro Grip meshes, which are polyester meshes, they do not require any kind of fixation, being a self-gripping mesh. And with other advantages of polyester mesh, I have kept on using them, and till date I have not encountered any recurrence with these meshes. Regarding your second question about the e-tape procedures, recently I have started doing e-tape procedures for patients who are short-statured, one, second with large indirect defects, and patients who would require placement of a very large mesh or who have a very large direct hernias. In these situations, I have started doing e-tape procedures, and it is really a wonderful procedure, giving wide exposure of the space of Ritzius and space of Bogros, and use of it. Still, I would like to use them for these indications which I have mentioned. Regarding a very clear take-home message, I would suggest that one should learn pre-peritoneal repair, that is laparoscopic repair. If the surgeons are doing laparoscopies routinely, then it is a advancement of its laparoscopic technique, wherein you enter the hernia surgery as well. Because of distinct advantages of the pre-peritoneal repair, I would always recommend a pre-peritoneal repair wherever it is possible. Since the time I have started doing it, I have been doing tape repairs, but the recommendation is that initially you can do a few TAPP repairs, which gives a better acquaintance of the anatomy in this region. Secondly, patients who are operated already in that particular region, it is better to go transperitoneally and then do a TAPP repair. And in patients, in all other patients, one can either shift to the TEP repairs, or you can start with the tape repairs, because you avoid one step of opening the peritoneum, entering the pre-peritoneal space, creating a space there, and then laying the mesh and closing the repair. Because TAPP repairs almost always would require some kind of fixation of the mesh. The tape repairs, if the defects are small, like smaller direct defects or smaller indirect hernias, you may not always fix the mesh. You can just lay down the mesh and the peritoneum will hold it there. So tape distinctly has a bit of advantage over the TAPP. But yes, for the beginners, I would recommend TAPP repair.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Raj sir,
Yeah, is it okay?
Raj sir, I would like to make
Yes.
one comment for your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have asked a very nice question about the E-tap, and sir has also answered it very nicely. Just to add one comment, if you find that it is a short-statured patient, and if the distance between the pubic symphysis and the umbilicus is less,
Yeah.
I don't know how much less, but if it is normal than this less, then E-tap is always better, because you tend to go into the space which is very large. And if you have this distance which is very small, your ports, 3 ports in the midline, they clash with each other. So that's one of the advantage. And if the patient on table, you measure the distance between the pubic symphysis and the umbilicus, and if you find that distance is small, better to go for an E-tap.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
And what I feel is now, I mean, most of us, we have learned the tape repair from in a single line. So probably now, gradually, everybody should try to shift on e-tape rather than continuing tape. That is what is my opinion.
Yes.
Yeah. Definitely.
Sir, next question is from Dr. Vikas Jain, sir.
Yes, Vikas.
Dr. Vikas, sir, I have unmuted your mic. Dr. Vikas.
Sir,
Okay, is not available. Next
good
is
afternoon,
Dr.
sir.
Vikram Desai, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Acha,
Yeah,
Vikas.
Vikas is on the line. Yeah. Yeah, good afternoon, Vikas.
Yeah, Vikas, sir, please go ahead. He again got muted. Vikas, sir. Okay, we'll go to next question. Dr. Vikram Desai, sir.
Yeah.
Vikram Desai, sir, please unmute your mic. Vikram Desai, sir. He is also not available.
Hello.
Hi, Vikram.
Next is
Hearty
Dr. Unmesh Chandra, sir.
congratulations.
Hello. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Raj.
And today was
Congratulations.
supposed to be your installation. So
I know.
Official hearty congratulations to you and your team, both you
Yeah,
and
thank you so much.
Ashish.
Atish.
Atish Bansod. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Heartiest congratulations, Mukund, on a wonderful exposition. Very nice demonstration of procedures and anatomy. As usual, you are a master.
Yeah. Thank
Thanks
you.
for retaining some indications for open surgery, like obstructed or a strangulated hernia. For the rest, I think most of us are doing lap repairs. During the prevailing conditions, are there any apprehensions for lap surgery in general with COVID-19 in view?
I don't think we are still doing laparoscopic routine surgeries are out. We are doing only emergency laparoscopic procedures, and for acutely infected gallbladder or empyematous gallbladder or a infected appendix or malignancies, we are still doing laparoscopic procedures.
Yeah, okay, that's right. So thank you once again for a wonderful exposition.
Thank you.
Hello. Thakur, sir.
Hello. Yes, Vikas.
Mukund
Thank you,
Thakur,
Vikram,
sir.
sir.
Sir, Vikas Jain,
Bolo.
sir.
Yeah, Dr.
Yes.
Vikas, sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, most of the time the old patient presented with retention of urine with hernia. So can we advocate to go for TURP along with the lap hernia in the same sitting?
No, that's a contraindication to do a laparoscopic repair
Or
simultaneously.
in a gap of 2 or 3 days?
No, one should either do a TURP first because if he has landed in retention, it is important to do TURP before the hernia. And in cases of borderline prostates, you can choose the procedure which is for which the patient is symptomatic. But clubbing both these procedures, TURP and laparoscopic repairs, is absolute contraindication. You can do a open repair along with this TURP.
Okay. How much time should be there in between for both the surgery?
At least 3 months.
3 months.
Yes.
Sir, any reason for that, sir?
One has to take allow the seeped TURP fluid or the irrigation fluid to get absorbed, to let this changes of inflammation settle down in the prepubic space, and then only one should do the laparoscopic repair. Because see, you can get away
Yes, sir.
with no infection if you do
Yes, sir.
a TURP with lap repair, or immediately following the TURP within 3 to 4 days. You can get away with some kind of repairs if you do, but standard recommendation is there has to be 3 months gap in between TURP and the laparoscopic inguinal repair. If at all there is infection in one of the patients, then you will land
Okay.
up removal of the mesh. So it is better to give an adequate gap between these two procedures.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Next question is by Dr. Prashant Rahate, sir. Prashant, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
Mukund.
Prashant. Yeah, good evening.
Mukund. Yeah, good evening. It was fantastic thing as usual. I have two questions. One, how do you sterilize your equipments? And
Yes.
what are the cardinal signs you will look for the infection, and what are your protocols to go ahead with the dealing infection?
Yeah. First question is, all the hand instruments and the ports, they are and the camera, they are all sterilized with ETO machine along with the light source cable. Then you use a sleeve for the camera cover, camera cover for the camera cord, or light source cable and the cautery cable. Then during surgery, you should take precautions while handling the mesh. These are the precautions you should take while performing the procedure. All the hand instruments are either autoclaved or ETO sterilized. That is very important. Non-sterile formalin chamber instruments should not be used for hernia surgeries.
Yeah, that is important.
Your second question about noticing the infection. See, there are certain signs which you notice when these patients are in following up in the post-operative period. The first and foremost is discharge from the ports. Second is some boginess that is felt in the groin region. These are the signs which suggest that there could be either a seroma or a hematoma, or there could be early abscess formation. So you can investigate accordingly and do a ultrasound and see for any collection there. If you feel that there is only hematoma, then you allow it to settle down. If you feel that there is pus, then the early intervention has to be carried out.
So what is the your dictum, whether to remove mesh in the first go or not?
Generally, the during my early learning curve of these hernias, I have encountered a few infections when I must candidly admit that I was not sterilizing my instruments. That time I have noticed, whenever I have noticed the infection, I have removed the mesh. And still today also, whenever I find the infection, I remove the mesh. Because this infection is in the closed space. And nowadays, I do get some patients operated somewhere um, for the treatment of the mesh infection. And generally, these infections are NTM infections. So one can give a fair trial of uh, the medicines for non-tubercular mycobacterial infections after doing a culture. And if the sinuses start healing, then you can continue with the medicines. Or in case there is large amount of pus collection and the mesh is crumpled inside the pus pool, then this crumpled mesh needs to be removed. A mesh which is partly adherent to the abdominal wall, you can still give it a chance to be retained in the place.
Yeah. Thanks, Mukund.
Hello.
Thanks.
Hello, Rathi
Yes.
sir.
Yeah.
Just few comments for this question. Apart from what Mukund sir has said, I would like to differ. I would like to add one more investigation, that is a CT scan. If the patient is diabetic, febrile, with loss of appetite, and there is a lot of boginess and tenderness, get a CT scan done of that area, because that will tell us not about the amount of pus which is there, but also the crumpling of the mesh and also the air specks. If there are air specks, that is a gross anaerobic infection, better to do with the mesh removal.
Agreed. Agreed.
And start them on clindamycin and rifampicin, as sir had said, maybe for prolong. And if you really want to save mesh, VAC application, that is drainage of the pus with good lavage, and VAC application maybe 2 or 3 times definitely helps in preserving that mesh and saving that mesh.
Yes,
Where
definitely.
you will apply,
But
where you will apply that VAC in laparoscopy?
no, Prashant.
Sir, once you do, because if it is a TEP procedure, you can take a small incision, go into the preperitoneal space, remove the mesh, right? And if you want to conserve the mesh, just take a small incision, drain everything, especially in the retropubic space, and then apply the mesh at the same setting. You can apply the VAC at the same setting.
What he
But
means
Prashant,
is
I will tell you.
draining. Hello, Prashant. What he means
Yeah.
is probably draining a pus, just like we drain the appendicular abscess in the preperitoneal plane. And application of VAC is justified if the mesh is not floating or if the mesh has not crumbled and it has got partly adhered to the abdominal wall. Yes, you can still attempt to preserve the mesh.
I will tell you, Prashant and Mukund sir, that application of VAC over mesh is very hazardous, because that sponge will get impregnated with that mesh, and the particles of the sponge will be remaining there when you are removing the sponge of that VAC after 6 or 7 days, and that will again create a problem.
Can this sponge be kept at the on the skin itself without entering without keeping the sponge inside the space? Can this
Simple
sponge on the skin edges?
Simple Romovac will do then.
Yeah, maybe Romovac. Yes.
Sir, what I have tried in few of my cases, or 2 or 3 cases which were referred from outside, is what Mukund sir has told us, that we give a good complete lavage, see the mesh. If it is directly anchored and well nice seen, then what we do is we paint a small Bactigras over the mesh, and the VAC foam is not stuffed into it, is just onto the skin edges that we apply this VAC, and it really works well. We have done it in 3 cases, and we're tried to save 2 meshes by this VAC application. 2 settings were definitely required.
Okay, worth trying it, but maybe is this described somewhere, Prashant? Or
No,
is
no, it's not described. It is grade E evidence. It's just
okay,
case series or something. It's not described.
okay, okay, fine. But worth trying to salvage the mesh.
Yeah.
So, sir, what are the long-term implications of salvaging the infected mesh? Can it have a infection again, or there can be some loculated collection which is left on one aspect? Like if you have drained on the lateral aspect, the pus has come out there, and there is a loculated collection on the medial aspect which you are not seeing up completely, and you have applied WAC or something like that, and the collection is still there. For 15 days, patient is totally fine, but then 1-2 months later he comes back again with a local area pain or tenderness, and you have a small residual collection there.
Yeah, Yogesh,
How much sure are we
I
that we have completely drained the collection and then we have applied the WAC in this
uh,
scenario?
I personally do not have any experience of preserving the mesh. Primarily, as I said, that most of the meshes for which drainage was required, I have removed the mesh. But there was one patient who was operated at Pune. Bilateral inguinal hernia was done in the same sitting, and this patient developed infection. Now the surgeon there did a second operation, removing the mesh on one side on which there was prominent collection. So the sinuses on or the wound on that side partially healed, but at the same time this patient developed sinuses, discharging sinuses on the other side. Now this patient came to me, and he took some time to decide whether he wanted to remove the other mesh or not. I had suggested explantation of the other side mesh as well and giving the thorough lavage. At the same time doing a NTM culture as well. Now this patient was not prepared because he had come from Pune and he wanted some 2-3 months time to take decision. I started him on a combination of clarithromycin, this Septran and the doxycycline. I continued to give him, and after 15 days he sent me his own picture that describing that his sinuses are healing. So I said, still you would require mesh explantation. Then after 1.5 months, all his sinuses healed. And after 2 months, he came in follow-up to me. Even the wound which was created for removal of mesh on other side has completely healed now. Now, I did his USG examination, and there was no residual pocket of pus there. So I have decided to preserve this mesh because now he is asymptomatic about it. I do not know about others' experience, but this is one of the cases I have seen.
Yogesh, I think in surgery it is a dictum. Give one chance. If in
No,
one
sir,
chance
one chance, but
the
then,
mesh
sir,
doesn't.
in an infected or a pus, the dictum is also give copious lavage and remove all the pus pockets and the source of infection. That is also a
Yes.
dictum, sir.
Yeah, that holds true for the hernia.
We give this
That
chance.
holds true.
So it's a very, I mean, I understand, sir, your concern because your experience with these type of patients are far more, but then that thought had come. And sir, one more question to Thakur, sir. How common is this
Yes,
atypical mycobacterial infection? How common you
Very
see
common.
that?
Very common.
it is very common, Yogesh, and most if one has to do a repeated culture, you may not get positive culture within one specimen. You may have to do repeated culture to confirm that it is non-tubercular mycobacterial infection. But at the same time, if the patient is willing, you can start him on NTM regime.
Okay.
And
Thank you, sir.
definitely it is
Sir, next question. Yeah, next question is by Dr. Unmed Chandak, sir. Unmed, sir. Yeah, Unmed, sir.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Am I audible? Hello. Hi,
Yes.
sir. Good
Yes,
evening.
yes.
Unmed. Yes.
Sir, good evening.
Good evening.
Sir, it was a treat to listen to you. And the best part was you made the mesh to marry with the defect. So they will be stuck forever. They cannot leave each other. There will be no
They
recurrence.
have to stick with each other.
So that is one thing. Sir, actually, I might have missed, but we have not talked about the ports. Do you use all midline ports? Always?
Yeah, I use all midline ports.
And sir, I wanted to ask about a trade secret. Those who have watched you operate, actually, how can you get bang into between two layers of fascia transverse helix without dissecting? You put in 10 mm sharp port initially. That's what I have seen. And how do you
Yeah.
manage that? That's why your time is 25 minutes of the surgery.
Yes, see.
That part I think you have skipped.
Yeah. I have not deliberately spoken about it because it's a controversial issue. But I have an experience of more than 400 patients where I've created a blind entry with 10 mm port in the subumbilical this thing through the subumbilical incision. And if you see spinal anesthesia, what is the sensation they are looking for? It is the sensation of giving way.
Yes.
Spinal anesthesia is a blind procedure.
Yes.
All would agree with that.
Yes.
The
Yes.
sensation is while they are piercing the interspinal ligament. That is first sensation.
Yes.
And then the second sensation is entering the this CSF space. So
Yes,
these
sir.
two sensations are always blind sensations.
Yes.
Now, if you start doing this, you will get the feeling of first give way when you pierce rectus sheath in midline. It is easily possible to enter the rectus sheath in midline.
Yes.
So take your port from midline incision, subumbilical incision, for a distance of about 1.5 to 2 centimeters.
Right.
Parallel to the sheath.
Yes.
You give 45 degrees angle to your trocar, sharp trocar,
Okay.
and enter the rectus sheath in midline.
Okay.
If you enter in midline, there is no structure there.
Yes.
Now people are worried about bowel injury, bladder injury in this particular region. Now, if you see, and you must have noticed also, most of the times your bladder is even below the pubic rim.
Yes.
If the bladder is not distended.
Yes.
And it is
No, I was more interested in how
possible.
do you do it, sir, rather than complications. I am not worried about that because I have seen you do it. I wanted to learn, in fact, because it saves around 10 minutes. How do you manage
it saves
to do
10
that?
minutes. Theoretically, it is.
So
like
is there any special trocar you use, or it is the routine sharp trocar you use?
I used to use beveled trocars initially because beveled trocars take a good entry along with the sharp obturator.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Nowadays, I am doing with all kinds of trocars.
Oh, okay, sir. Thank you, sir. There is something called a sixth sense, and that's what is working, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I have actually scrubbed up n number of times with Thakur sir. I have not got a chance to assist him because he doesn't need assistant. He doesn't need third port. He doesn't need eyes to put, as you said. In the end, I used to tell sir, let me close the skin. So he used to allow me to do that.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Sir, we have one more question from Dr. Ravindra Telkar sir, Amravati. Telkar sir.
Welcome, Ravi.
You're online. Yeah, Ravindra sir. Yeah.
Hello, Mukund.
Hi, welcome.
Are you audible?
Yeah.
I'm audible. Okay.
Yes.
Yogesh, I am from Akuna, Amravati.
Sorry, sir. Sorry.
Okay, it's all right. Yogesh, wonderful, Mukund, wonderful presentation as usual. As you have said in your study, you notice there are some post-operative neurologic patients which lasted for some time only, and you treated them. Also, you had patients who had persistent neuralgia. No, I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you, how do you treat those patients having postoperative neuralgia, neuropraxia rather, and what did you do to those two patients? I mean, how did you convince them? कारण प्रत्येकच पेशंट persistent neuralgia आला की डोकं खातो, पण त्याला पटवलं कसं प्रत्येक? I want to know.
See, for these two patients out of 300, you have to be really patient. You have to give them enough time to vent their anger or vent their frustration out. That is very important.
Right.
But then at the same time, they are very difficult to treat. You have to use combination of pregabalin or kind of drugs which are available. Then you can actually theoretically you can do a nerve mapping and block these nerves. But this peripheral nerve mapping is not
Very
available
difficult.
with us. Very difficult. So-called pain therapy specialists available in Nagpur. I have discussed with them n number of times. But still they are unable to, whenever I send the patients to them, they come back with some kind of analgesic or pregabalin prescription. I have never seen.
Local installation of 5% phenol, will it help? Under CRM guide?
Not know, but it is definitely contraindicated for at least 3 months. Till the time the mesh settles down in the space. One should not intervene or kind of inject any kind of nerve blocker in that particular space, because there is a chance of introducing infection.
Right. Hey, one of my friend got operated for bilateral TEP at Mumbai. He had persistent pain which lasted for about 4 to 5 years. And every time that was a headache for him, because every time he used to come to me, yaar kuch bata, iske liye kuch bata. And patient was doctor.
Okay.
Radiologist. So it was very much difficult for me to convince him every time.
Yeah, we can only hope that these incidences occur to the minimum and hope for the best.
No. And second thing regarding infection and the treatment of the infection of the meshes in tape. असं वाटत नाही कधी कधी की ओपन हर्नियामध्ये मेश रिमूव्हल अँड ट्रीटमेंट ऑफ द इन्फेक्टेड मेश इज व्हेरी सिम्पल एज कम्पेअर्ड टू इन्फेक्टेड मेश इन टेप?
No. In fact, the removal of mesh in tape is very easy. If you do a simple X-ray, you will come to know how many tackers they have used. You have to ensure that those tackers are removed, and you can remove the floating part of mesh.
नहीं, Lichtenstein procedure open I am asking.
Yeah, removal
open
of
hernia
mesh.
repair.
Lichtenstein
Open hernia. Lichtenstein.
You mean to say it is easy to remove or difficult to remove?
It is very easy. It is very easy to remove and to take care of the infection also.
No,
as compared
I differ on this. Yeah, I would differ on this because the type of infections which we encounter in laparoscopic repair are different than the types of infections which we see in open repairs. And removal of mesh is much easier in laparoscopic repairs. That's what I wanted to say, because it is just like draining a preperitoneal abscess. You have to enter the preperitoneal space by incising and splitting the muscles without opening the peritoneum. As soon as you enter the space, the pus gushes out and you can actually feel the mesh lying there. And it is easy to remove.
Sir, now we have a last query from Qureshi sir. I'll ask him if he's online. Qureshi sir, you're online? I can see your hand. Qureshi sir, please unmute yourself.
Can he route the infection through, route the question through you?
Yes sir, but there is no message which has come up from his side.
Not even message.
In a group, we'll put in our WhatsApp group. Aurora sir had some comment. Aurora sir. Yeah, Aurora sir, please go ahead.
I raised my hand a second back. I couldn't resist complimenting that it was wonderful presentation. You hardly left any room for any question. Everything
Thank
has
you,
been
sir.
covered. I just want to make comment regarding this infection. It sounds
Yeah.
that you know, in every other dimension you have more experience, but in infection part, maybe I am having more experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would
So I have
hear
enrolled in
that,
3
sir.
cases, and
Yeah.
I will make clear admission. All 3 cases are admitted, were operated by me only. Out of which,
Okay.
incidentally, in 2 cases it was bilateral and it was open. In 2 cases. In 1 case
Okay.
alone, it was infection after tap, right?
Okay.
I will first talk about tap. What I want to say, the bottom line is, I will make it short, that why we are all differing. Somebody is saying that removal is difficult. Somebody is saying no, removal is easy. From this place is easy, or this plane is easy. And Dr. Prashant also said that no one we should give chance. I tell you why we are having this heterogeneous experience. Actually, all infections are not alike. According to me, the abnormality as far as abscess addition to the wound base is concerned, it is different in all cases. The best policy is to remove that part of the mesh which is coming off easily. Sometimes whole mesh comes off easily, whether it is Leichenstein or it is a infected mesh at a deeper plane, as we have in laparoscopic hernia. So
Yeah.
whatever is coming off easily, you should remove that, and whatever is not coming off easily, you should give it a chance, because especially when your pus culture is negative for routine culture is negative, then it is likely to be atypical mycobacterium, and you can always give it a try. Removing a mesh which is adherent densely is always
Yeah.
hazardous in that area, and one should not venture that also. So
Yes.
it's a good policy to remove that part of the mesh which is either loose, crumbling like you said, and you can retain part of that
Loose
part.
part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Secondly, a person asked about this nagging pain for 5 years. I think MRI should be done at early stages in these cases. You may get a definite lesion which one can intervene with. Sometimes these people are driven to suicide also. It should not be trivialized. A chronic pain is a great morbidity, and you should leave no stone unturned to investigate them and also actively intervene if it is not going, rather than be dismissive about them and call them merely psychological.
Yeah.
Yes,
Very
I am
true.
done. Yeah. I rest my case, sir. Yes.
Yeah, that's a wonderful comment, sir. And probably we should agree to one point that the loose tags or loose part of the mesh,
Yeah.
which is sitting in the pus, has to be removed.
And then treat it like atypical mycobacteria. Give that regime,
Yeah.
whatever you choose to give. Unless
Yes.
there is specific organism is shown in the routine culture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yes, my comment is over.
Yeah, most of the
Yeah.
questions are
Yogesh?
over now. I'll hand over to Prashant sir for last comment, Prashant Bhaute sir for his last comment, and then we'll close off the session.
It was very nice webinar. I think few of the points which I can gather about webinar first is that so much contribution is there, that hesitation of seeing in the auditorium for asking a question is not there in webinar. One. Secondly, so much active participation is there because there is no time bound. Everybody is free, and a lot of good questions have come with this. That's good thing about webinar. Comments about this Thakur sir's talk today, it was excellent. As you have seen, many questions. That means your topic has been understood by many people. And
yeah, if we are discussing about only one topic. Hello. Yeah, thank you. Yogesh, for involving me in this webinar, and I congratulate you on this particular idea. And it is definitely better to organize such events on the webinar rather than sitting in the hotel. We can have informal get-togethers in the hotel, but formal meetings should be on the webinar. That's what a take-home message should be. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Tomorrow we'll meet at 8 p.m. in the night. Dr. Qureshi sir will be presenting his case on complex hernias, a talk on complex hernias. So tomorrow 8 p.m. in the evening. Okay. Chalo, bye bye.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Bye.